board hasn't quite got off the ground just yet. In the real world, there is one form of future transport that has, and that's the e-scooter. They're cheap to run, they're environmentally friendly, and I think I can vouch for this one and say they're actually very easy to use. And if you live in one of the 31 regions trialling them, chances are you've seen one. But whether you'll welcome them is a different question. Elaine Maries from Milton Keynes isn't so sure.
Every time I step outside the house, I know that I'm usually going to encounter an e-scooter whizzing up the road or on the pavement. So I get very anxious before I've even set foot out of the door. Go on then, Inks.
Elaine has a visual impairment. Her guide dog, Inka, helps her get around.
And the door. Good girl. Forward.
But she says that's becoming increasingly difficult because the pavement outside her home is part of Milton Keynes' Redways route. 200 miles of paths, all shared by pedestrians, cyclists and e-scooter riders.
The issue is the speed that people ride the e-scooters. There's also no sound to the e-scooters. So it's not until you either hear somebody shouting at you to get out of the way or you just feel the wind of somebody going past you at high speed that you actually know that it's an e-scooter. You can actually feel your heart racing, and then you have to calm yourself down before you can continue walking, because otherwise my anxiety and panic goes through the dog's harness and will stop my dog from working and doing her job properly.
Milton Keynes was one of the first cities to trial e-scooters in 2020. Here, 3 different companies hire them out. All you need to do is download an app, fill in a few details, then away you go. They can only be ridden on minor roads or cycle paths, but Elaine says not everyone rides them responsibly.
Forward, Inka.
Last year, she was knocked over by an e-scooter on the path shared by bikes, pedestrians and e-scooters right outside her home.
I was actually stood this way with my back and I was putting Inka's harness on. Somebody had come round the corner, 2 people on one scooter. They hit me in the back. I fell over, fell onto Inka. First concern was my dog. And then, my anxiety and then anger came up. I was feeling quite angry.
Elaine wasn't hurt, but Inka was left with a leg injury that put her out of action for 6 weeks, leaving Elaine to rely on her white cane to help her get around. And just 2 weeks later, Elaine had her second run-in with an e-scooter, this time a stationary one.
I was aware that something was on the pavement, and as I was trying to negotiate it with my cane, I then tripped over. There was a pedestrian who said that there was 3 scooters all piled up and I'd tripped over one of the handlebars.
Riders in the centre of Milton Keynes must use one of the designated e-scooter parking bays. But in other parts of the city, where there are no such areas, you can park anywhere, as long as you don't cause obstruction to others. But the rules aren't always followed. The fall left Elaine with a fractured foot and seriously shaken up.
Straight up. I'd like to see better regulation of e-scooters. It would be nice if there was some sort of sound or noise on the e-scooter so that we could actually hear it much quicker before it actually gets to us.
Milton Keynes Council told us that it's hosting the e-scooter trial so that the organisers can understand everyone's experiences, and that feedback like Elaine's is exactly the sort that they're keen to learn from. But with 31 e-scooter trials across England, the problem of keeping pedestrians and riders safe is a national one. Now, although e-scooters are fun to ride, they do come with a list of very strict regulations that are aimed at keeping the rider, pedestrians and other road users safe. For a start, riders must hold either a full or provisional driving licence. E-scooters mustn't be ridden any faster than 15.5 miles per hour. Perhaps most significantly, only rented scooters in trial areas can be used on roads, and under no circumstances must they be ridden on pavements. If you've actually bought one, then I'm afraid almost everywhere is off limits. You can't legally ride a privately owned scooter anywhere other than on private land. But I wanted to find out just how much of all that people really know. Have you ever been on one of these e-scooters?
No.
Do you know the rules, though, if you're on one of them?
You're not allowed on the road, or you're not allowed on the pavement?
Not allowed on the pavement?
Not allowed on the pavement, OK.
As far as I know, they're not supposed to be on the pavement. Feels a bit dangerous to me.
What do you think would be dangerous about them?
Running into someone.
Did you just ride one?
Yes.
Would you think about getting one of your own, a private one?
Yes.
And would you know what the restrictions are for them at the moment?
No, which is why I don't have one. So I'd go with these where they can tell you where you can and can't go.
There are a dozen different companies operating e-scooter trials across the UK. Alan Clark is from one of the biggest operators, Lime. We've had so many complaints from people that they find that these scooters are just abandoned, left on the pavement, and they become a real obstacle for people in wheelchairs, people who are disabled, and the blind. How can you stop people doing that?
All of our scooters have designated parking bays that have been agreed with the local authority. They're marked on the street, and then they're then marked in our app as well. So the way it works is that the scooter has a GPS in it, and if the GPS on the scooter doesn't match the GPS of a designated parking area, we won't let you end your journey. And then what happens is that we know you've misparked the scooter, so then you'll be fined for having parked outside of a parking bay. Our team then will collect the scooter and move that back to a parking bay. So it's one of the ways that we make sure that people are A, disincentivised to leave a scooter anywhere apart from a parking bay, but B, in the event that a scooter is outside of a parking bay, it's moved very quickly back to a location that's been identified by the local authority and by us as a safe and sensible place to park e-scooters.
I see down the front there's a list of things that remind people of what they can and cannot do, like going on pavements. How do you know that someone is on a pavement?
When we receive reports of that, we will issue a warning to someone, remind them of the rules, we make sure they know the law. If they do it again, then we will ultimately ban them from our service because it's illegal to do so.
But how do you know they've done it? That's what I need to know.
So every e-scooter has an identification plate. So it's a 6-letter code. And if someone sees someone riding on a pavement, they can report that to us. We have a record of where every single scooter is at all times of the day or night. And if someone hires it, we have a record of exactly where they rode. So we do have a mechanism for tracking that. And we also have things like vibration sensors within the scooter that can detect the difference between, for example, riding on the road on a smooth surface and riding on the pavement where you have paving slabs and thus a different form of vibration. But ultimately, once someone's ridden on the pavement, all we can do is take action against that person.
There's also something that could be done to the scooters themselves to help keep pedestrians safe from riders who do break the rules. And that's to make it easier for people to hear them coming by getting them to emit a sound, which is where Dr. Antonio Torija Martinez at the University of Salford comes in. He's part of a team trying to identify the most effective sound. And he's asked Elaine to take part in an experiment.
Good morning, Elaine.
Morning.
Good morning, Inka.
Good girl.
Elaine is heading into a special booth where she'll hear samples of 10 different sounds, as if they're coming towards her from all directions, mimicking what she'd hear every day on the streets. Antonio and his team will be monitoring Elaine's responses to see which of the 10 sounds she thinks provides the most effective warning for pedestrians.
So you will need to tell us the moment when you perceive the scooter and the direction the scooter is coming from, whether it's left or right. Okay?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Elaine then